not shut up and dribble.
The champ is here. I must be the greatest. The champ is here.
I'm going to continue to stand with the people.
The champ is here.
I will not lose.
Come on, man. I took up the wall.
Yes, welcome. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you are here with we. My name is EJ, and I got my man,
MH.
Yes, he's the DB of the show, and we are Black in Sports, giving a voice to the culture that won't shut up and dribble. Here, interviewing the best professionals in the game and in the boardroom, covering it all, laughing at all, while providing a platform to be heard. All right, so today's show, you know how we do about this time, and excited to welcome in veteran journalist who's covered the NBA, golf, NFL, a published author, but currently staff writer for the Baltimore Ravens and host of the Black in NFL show. So let's clap it up. Hey, happy to have Clifton Brown here, man. Thank you so much, Clifton, man, for taking time and sitting down with some rooks. So we definitely want to jump right into it. And how we started is ask, a shoot your shot question. So this is where you went for it all, bet on yourself, man, and you just gambled and said, you know what, I'm gonna try this. It may work and it may not work. But just a story, it could have been high school days, college days, early in your career, or even, in recent days. But give us a shoot your shot moment. Go.
Very good question. Kind of the podcast I'm doing, Black in NFL, was kind of a shoot your shot motion. But the first thing that popped in my mind was when I first started in journalism. My first job was in Boca Raton, Florida, at a newspaper that doesn't exist anymore, the Boca Raton News.
Okay.
I was in Tampa. I'm from Philly, born and raised. Never left Philly, my whole youth. And then my first plane ride was for my job interview down in Florida.
Okay.
And, went for the interview. When I got back, they offered me the job a couple of days later. And yeah, again, I was moving 1,000 miles away.
Right.
No family, no friends. It was the unknown. But I remember my mom telling me, look, you say you always want to be a sports writer. This is your shot. What are you going to do? And I went. And that started the road to where I am now.
Boy, now that is a shoot your shot moment right there.
Definitely. So starting back in Philly, where did your love for sports writing or just sports in general, where did that start?
Yeah, I've always loved sports, man, since I can remember. I'm talking like 5 or 6 years old. I'm not sure where that love started, but it's always been a part of my life. Philly, type of place, great athletes on every corner. I'm not the biggest guy in the world. I played stuff, but I didn't have to walk too far to find somebody who was a better baller than me. So I kind of realized that I was never going to be a professional athlete. And so when I got to be junior high school, college, how was I going to stay around what I loved? And I kind of had a little knack for writing. Again, my mom, my grandmom, they were like, hey, you have a knack for writing, you love sports. They kind of put the bug in my ear that like sports writing would be a way to combine the two. And I've never done anything else. I mean, I've been blessed. Like, if I had to do something else outside of sports, I don't know what that would be. And now I'm getting to the age where I'm thinking I may never have to find out.
That's what's up.
So did you cover like your high school back in the day? Did you cover them with writing and everything?
Yeah, we had a little high school newspaper. I went to Yale, and shout out to Yale High School outside of Philly. Went there, and then Temple. I was on the school newspaper, and really those clips back in the day. This is prehistoric times now. No internet, no Twitter. The written newspaper, which unfortunately to me, the newspaper business seems to be dying, but that was the thing when I was, in high school and college, to get something published. People got the newspaper delivered on their driveway every day. And yeah, those clips I wrote at the Temple News were what attracted the Boca Raton News. I sent my best clips to some papers all around the country, Boca Raton was the first paper to call me and say, hey, we like your stuff. Would you like to come down for an interview? It was those clips I wrote in college about Temple's basketball team, Temple's football team, Temple's soccer team, whatever, that got the managing editor's attention to the point where he called me down for an interview. And then, once he offered me the job, I went.
Let's go. So So Philly guy, all Philly sports still. I mean, we know who pays you, so we ain't gonna take it too far, right? Speaking of that purple hue, so folks, if you're watching this, don't adjust your screens. He is really repping right now with the Ravens purple. But so Philly sports fan across the board, all the home teams.
No question. I mean, when I was growing up, there was no ESPN. We had the game of the week, the NBA game of the week, MLB game of the week. But most of this, when you turn on TV, you saw your home team playing against somebody. So, yeah, I mean, it kind of kills me now. It's like, cats from Chicago, I'm a Golden State fan, I'm a Knicks fan. It wasn't like that when I grew up. You repped your hometown. And, yeah, it is in my blood. I mean, Philly, Sixers, Dr. J. Yeah, that's me. Philly's Mike Schmidt, that's me. Flyers, Broad Street Bullies,
okay,
that's me. So yeah, Philly through and through. Again, that's all I knew growing up, and those are the guys, those are the players who sparked my love and my rooting interest for sports.
And now, do you still have that same love for Ben Simmons with your Sixers?
Oh man, you really went for it, man. Like you doubled me over, man. I'm still not over that series at all.
Hey,
I'm not over it.
Okay.
So, man, I don't even know how to respond to that. I don't, Ben, I was a big Ben guy up until this last playoff series. Now, I don't know. I think it might be better for both parties for them to move on.
Well, hey, don't give up on you. You have another person here on this podcast that's a support of a Ben. So, MH, would you definitely share he shouldn't give up and tell him why he shouldn't give up right now?
No, I agree with you, Clifton. I think his time might be up in Philadelphia. But I like Ben Simmons. I like his game. I think he has a lot of talent. I think there's some mental roadblocks he has to get by. But I don't think the 76ers, obviously, I don't think that situation is best to display his skill set, I guess, throughout the course of a season. So
yeah, I mean, we're in the win now, times. What have you done for me lately? But to me, this is a situation where it is up to Ben. I mean, he has not been a good free throw shooter, nor has he had a jump shot his whole NBA career. and people have wanted him to do that. And like you said, he has so many other skills. I don't know. You guys have probably seen. I hadn't seen the interview. Kobe Bryant was interviewed about Ben Simmons a few years ago.
Yeah.
That to me, if you're Ben Simmons and you watch Kobe Bryant talking about how important it is for you to develop a jump shot and how awesome you would be if you had one, if that doesn't move you, then I don't know what will. And now this is the first time in his career where I believe his teammates, maybe not all of them, but some of them are like, Ben, what's up?
Yeah.
Are you going to be in the gym this summer? Are you going to round the game? Because if you aren't, the same thing could happen.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think he's still developing. I think he's developed a lot on the defensive end, where he's kind of like, I want to almost put him in that same category as not quite yet, but Scottie Pippen, Kawhi Leonard, where he's like elite of elite when it comes to defender, and he has to round out his offensive game, like you were saying. I also think he's playing out of position, but we can get into that later date.
We have a whole Ben Simmons podcast. Right.
We definitely talked about it.
So transitioning to Temple, how did you choose a school? What was that process like for you? And it's an historic university, so just kind of tell me some stories about Temple.
Well, obviously everybody in Philly knows Temple. Has all the big five schools. To me, they're all great schools. But for my story, actually, I started at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and loved it. Loved it to the point where I wasn't really studying the way I should be. My dad showed up one time at campus. Or actually, one time he showed up at campus, caught me by surprise. I wasn't exactly studying the time he came over. Then when my grades came out, he just looked at it. He said, "Son, you can do this at home." So next thing I know, my mom went to Temple. Actually, my mom, she was the first Black female to graduate from Temple School of Pharmacy. Wow. And so she actually also wanted to go to Howard. My grandfather, her father didn't want her to go away to school. She went to Temple her first year. Some of the professors she had were trying to flunk her out because she was black. And my mom was really miserable there. But by the end of her freshman year, being the type person she was like, they're so determined to try and get me out of this school. I'm going to graduate from this school. So she told her father, I'm staying put. She graduated, and she was the first black woman to graduate from Temple School of Pharmacy. So with that legacy, and being from Philly and not doing what I was supposed to do at Howard, they yanked me out and put me back at Temple.
So now, what was your first job coming out of Temple straight to the New York Times, or was that when you went down, you were down in the Florida and then kind of moved your way up?
Yeah, yes.
Your whole career's been in journalism, right? So that's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Boca Raton News went there. That was my first job. Stayed there a year and a half. And then at that time, Boca Raton News was owned by Knight Ridder Corporation, which owned quite a few papers around the country. And one of the papers they owned was in Detroit Free Press. So the Free Press was looking for a sports writer to cover 3 of their suburban bureaus. They needed a sports writer for each one. So I interviewed in Detroit for that job, got it, went to Detroit, was there about 2 years covering high schools, and I wanted to move up, and I thought I was ready to move up. The sports editor there disagreed. So fortunately for me, he got a sabbatical, a fellowship to Stanford, and left as sports editor, and we got a new sports editor. So the new sports editor comes in, he takes everybody separately to lunch in the department. When he takes me to lunch, he says, I like the way you write. I think you have a lot of potential. I think you should be doing more than covering high schools. And I just figured he was telling that to everybody who was covering high schools. But as it turned out, he felt like I needed to grow. So he just moved me downtown from the suburban bureaus. I stopped covering high schools. I did everything, like general assignment. I did auto racing. One day I do baseball, whatever. And then finally the Pistons beat opened up, and I applied for it, and I got it. And then that was during the Bad Boy days with, Isaiah and Rodman and Mahorn. So obviously that brought me a lot of attention. And then a gentleman I used to work with, Thomas George, he went to work for the New York Times. When they needed somebody to cover the Nets, he told them about me. And I ended up interviewing at the Times, and that's how I ended up. That's the shortest version I can tell you how I ended up at the New York Times.
Wow.
That's unbelievable. So the art to writing, to sports writing, I had a 2-week career in journalism, I feel like, when I went to school, and it didn't work out that way. But I know there's an art to it and a technique, and obviously you kind of design and hone your skills. But talk to me about the art of sports writing in general and how you kind of learned it and improved your game and your craft throughout your career.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's a lot to it as far as different ways. First of all, I think you have to be passionate about it and bring that passion to your writing. I mean, if you read something you write and you don't care about it, why should anybody else? If you don't want to read it, why should anybody else want to read it? So to me, you always have to bring that type of passion. Like, look, I'm going to write something that at least I think is half decent. I'm going to try my best to think that I like it, even if nobody else thinks it's anything. Secondly, doing your research, doing your reading home. And now one thing I like about, the age we're in now, you can find out so much information at your fingertips. So when you go to interview somebody, there's no excuse for not knowing about, their background, not doing your homework. And that leads you to asking better questions, which almost always leads to better responses. And then another thing is to read. Like, if you read anything, if you like it, you should look at, first of all, who wrote it. Okay. Then you should say to yourself, why did I like that article? Why did I like that book? So whatever it was, what about their style was it that drew me in? Was it just what they were writing about? Or did they utilize, certain words, the way they got into a scene or the way they described something that hooked you? So those are all things, even now, one thing, even getting older, unlike athletics, as long as your mind is working well, you can still grow as a writer almost to the day you die. It's not something where you have to depend on your physical skills to be good or to improve. As long as your mental skills and you are willing to put it in time, you can still be better.
Wow. And so with that, so that's the foundation, right? Finding out that you're passionate, looking and taking pieces of what other people that inspire you've done and see how you can incorporate that in your craft. How has that changed, right? Because you came, like you said, from paper days to now things are so digital. So how have you adapted or grown to kind of, transform and making sure that you write holds people attention? Because people aren't writing, people don't even read tweets now. That's only 150 some characters, right? So if you post something, they don't read the whole thing. So how have you kind of adapted or grown through that kind of headache?
Another great question. I've had to make a lot of changes, and maybe not always successfully, and maybe not always willingly at first. The whole Twitter, communicating by Twitter, I was slow to really embrace that. Still don't, the way most of my colleagues do. I'm not on Twitter all the time. Twitter's a great place for information.
Sure.
But to be frank, I mean, there's so much hate on Twitter that to me, it turns me off. So I like to go to it for information, see what other people are saying. Once in a while, I won't be able to hold myself back and I have to weigh in on something. But the whole back and forth with people you don't even know or like hiding behind their computers saying nasty things, I'm not into that at all. But
Twitter gangsters, boy.
Yeah, I'm not. But as far as holding people's attention, yes, people still, when you do a podcast, when you write a story, when you're on television, if nobody's watching and listening, you become irrelevant. So one thing I've always done, try to do, whether I'm speaking, writing, whatever, is get to the point and try and hook them. Try and hook them at the beginning. Like if you hook the fish, then you got a chance to catch the fish. And if you hook them at the beginning with your lead of a story, if you paint a picture where, wow, the first couple of graphs are like, okay, they want to read more. All of a sudden, maybe they get all the way to the end and it's not like, wow, I don't want to finish this. So you got to hook them. Don't beat around the bush. Say what you mean. Write what you mean. And again, write something in a way where you're trying to get their attention at the beginning, and maybe you can keep them.
The competitive nature I see kind of oozing through the purple hue of your shirt. Kind of how did you, kind of compete against your competitors and growing through the process and in your career?
Very good question. I mean, I worked in some really competitive markets. First, Detroit was competitive. At the time I was there, the Free Press and the News, which two papers would still exist, but they've merged now. When I was there, they were fighting for survival, both of them. So any beat you covered, your job was to try and beat the person with the Detroit News. Your job may depend on it. The paper's future may depend on it. Then from there, I went to New York, and it was like that's a whole singular animal unto its own.
We don't get into that.
Knicks games around. I was there, Pat Riley era, John Starks and Ewing. I mean, there'd be like 9 beat writers, Newark, Bergen County, the Post, the Times, the Daily News, Newsday.
Yes.
I mean, every game, every road trip. So you were not going to break every story. You were not going to win every game. And you weren't going 82-0. But it definitely honed your competitive skills. And some, like at one time, myself, a gentleman, Curtis Bunn, who's now author, romance. He's done pretty well with the romance author genre. He was covering the Knicks for Newsday, and Rob Parker, who works for Fox Sports. We were all covering the beat at the same time. So it was 3 blacks sports writers covering the same team at a time when you rarely saw that.
Hold on, and Stephen A. was around there too. I don't know where he was with.
He came after us. Yeah, Stephen A. is a younger pup than us. Yeah.
I saw an old picture Rob threw up of that, man. So I was like, yo, those are some heavy. That's a heavy circle to roll around with, man.
Yeah.
Y'all were doing tough things. So like you said, it was you, Rob, and
Curtis Bond. Yeah,
Curtis Bond. Yeah, that's doing it.
We were all covering the Knicks, and we used to go at it, and but. We remain friends to this day. We all helped each other get better. And yeah, I mean, it was just what we had to do. Yeah. But that's as competitive as it gets as a sports writer to me. Those days in New York.
So you touched on it. Oh, go. You got to follow up, MH?
No, go ahead.
So you kind of touched on it, right? So how was that coming out? And I'm talking about blacks in media, right? On your podcast, and I'm sure we'll talk about that as well. But you talk about coming into doing an interview, and when you're there at a football game, they're like, well, who's this black dude, covering the football game? And then you also just talking about that powerhouse of, that crew you guys worked with, when I'm pretty sure that you guys had that competitive spirit, but you guys were all looking to lift each other up. So how was it coming through the ranks, being a black in media, where we were underrepresented?
Yeah, I mean, that is still the case to this day. And, I feel like I always felt an obligation to try and help that not be the case. I always tried to give back to younger writers coming up, try to approach them, introduce myself, let them know that, I was always available for them for advice. And yeah, as far as doing the job, I mean, it depended on the situation. I mentioned on the podcast, the first time I covered an NFL game, I was still working in Boca. We used to cover Dolphins home games.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I was so excited to cover my first NFL game. And absolutely. I got to the press box, and yeah, when I walked in, it was at the Orange Bowl. I mean, I would say there were like 80 writers there, and like there were no other black writers there. I hadn't even thought about that, honestly, before it happened. Like, I was just so excited to be the game. I guess if you would ask me how many other black writers you think will be there, I would have probably said, oh, not many. I was just excited. I wasn't thinking I'm a pioneer. I wasn't thinking about any of that. But when I got in that press room, I felt the eyes looking at me, and I'm like, I know why. It's not just because they haven't seen me before. It's because I look the way I do. And so, yeah, that was a moment where I'm like, you know what? You're not just doing this for yourself, because unfortunately, to me, yeah, if I mess up in that situation, it's not just going to be, okay, Cliff Brown messed up, and then the next brother or sister is going to get an opportunity. Somehow it reflects on them too. Sure. And then some people are hesitant to give the next brother or sister an opportunity because the last brother or sister who had the opportunity didn't do the job.
Absolutely.
That's deep. Well, you are a pioneer, and thank you again for joining us, man. I'm learning so much. I feel like I can talk to you for hours. 1990 to 1994 Knicks beat writer. Those were some of the heydays of the Knicks. So how you touched on how it was, but 1993 Game 2 Eastern Conference Finals, I guess they call it the dunk, John Starks. How was just covering Jordan and the three-peat Bulls, the first three-peat Bulls? How was that atmosphere?
It was the best. I mean, I was blessed, to be there and see it. I mean, yeah, Jordan. Well, first I was in Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit. Yeah.
so I was covering the Bad Boys going against Jordan. Then I moved to New York, and then the Knicks become a major rival of the Bulls. So I got a lot of Jordan.
Got a lot of it.
A lot of it.
And yeah, I mean, Michael, he was very good with the media. I mean, he actually liked talking to writers from other cities. Sometimes he would pump you for information. Really? He was trying to find out, what was going on with the team. Yeah. So he was available before games, just sitting there in front of his locker. Would talk to people, especially faces he recognized. But that atmosphere there with the Knicks, it was just great. I mean, when Pat Riley became their coach, I knew enough from watching with the Lakers. The Pistons lost to them in 7 one year and then beat them the next year. I mean, Riley, one of the most demanding coaches I've ever been around. I just knew when he came to New York, I just felt he would win. I just felt like he would demand. They had enough talent where he would demand, and a center like Patrick Ewing, they would win. And that's exactly what happened. So, yeah, they weren't afraid of the Bulls. They couldn't get over the hump, but they would push Michael and his crew to the limit. And yeah, watching those games was unbelievable.
So we heard stories about Jordan in The Last Dance getting motivation from all kinds of places. Did you give him any motivation for some of the 50-point games?
I'm gonna this is a true story. I had to do a story on Michael when he came back out of retirement the first time. He had won the 3 titles.
Yeah.
Went to play baseball. Then decided that he was coming back to the NBA. So I'm working in the New York Times. He's coming back to the NBA. It was the summer when they shot Space Jam. That was the summer he was working to come back. He came back actually before that. They lost to Orlando. A lot of people don't remember that.
Yeah.
He came back like real late. Maybe came back for the playoffs. I remember they lost to Orlando, but then he spent that whole summer working out, doing Space Jam. So I go to Chicago to this preseason game, actually to a Bulls practice. He sees me, but he's leaving. I guess they forgot to tell him, I was coming. They didn't set up an interview. So he's like, man, I can't talk to you today. If you come to the exhibition game tomorrow in Quad Cities, Iowa, which I think is like a 3 or 4 hour drive to Chicago, I'll talk to you before the game. So, I called the paper and said, I got to go to Quad City. I make the drive. So the next day, before this exhibition game, he talks to me. He gives me this great interview about, they set up this bubble out in California when they were filming Space Jam, and all these players came out to play pickup games, and how, he really got his game together, and he's down to like 218 was his exact weight he wanted to be. When I'm leaving, so I'm like, thanks, Mike, for your time. I'm walking away from the interview's over. He's like, yo. I'm like, yeah. He's like, yo, he said, when you get back to New York, you tell Patrick he should have won a championship when I was born. I'm back. Just like that.
Let's go. He was
like,
that serious.
Holy crap. Like to myself, like this dude, man. Yeah, I had a feeling right then. Yep. And they ended up winning the next 3 titles in a row. But he told me, he's like, you tell Patrick, he should have won his championship when I was born.
So real quick, speaking on that's hilarious. But there's another story, I guess, that happened that for me was like the first time where sports and pop culture and politics all mixed, and that was kind of the OJ Simpson trial. And I know that happened right during, I think the Broncos chase was literally right during the NBA Finals game against Knicks against the Rockets. Yeah. So tell us about reliving that moment.
That was crazy, man. Like, I guess the shortest way I can say it is, okay, the Bronco chase starts. At the Times office. The Times office is only like 10-block walk to Madison Square Garden. So I don't remember exactly, but by the time I'm in the office, getting ready to walk down to the Garden for the game, the Bronco chase has started. So then I walk down to the arena. I got to go, the game, walk down the arena. Before the game, I remember I saw Ahmad Rashad, Bob Lanier, and somebody else, I can't remember they all knew OJ. Like they knew him. Yeah. And they're all talking about
those backyard barbecues he used to have, right?
Like this one boy. And they're all like, distraught, but they're like, this is like terrible for them. This is a scat they know.
Yeah.
And then the game starts and it's still going on. So there are people with radios and little TVs behind us on press row giving us updates on what's happening with the team. While the game's going on.
What's going on?
Yeah, he's parked now outside. They're not. I'm like, this is crazy. This is crazy. It was like the weirdest night. So I actually didn't, unlike a lot of people who were watching it, I guess people were flipping back and forth between the teams. I'm at the game. I'm covering the game, but we're getting updates behind. It was crazy.
Wow.
No, that's insane. And it was funny. I was looking at that too, because I was like, going back and I was like, he probably should have won, because that was the time they made it to the finals.
Yeah.
And then they lost it. Then they lost to Houston. So for you to tell that story, that had to be painful for them.
Yeah. Derek Harper, another guy I love. Knicks brought him in. He was their point guard when they lost to Houston in 7. First Knicks got up 3-2 and then lost game 6. So game 7, Harper, I talked to Derek about 3 or 4 years ago. He told me this story. Wherever they were staying, the Knicks, it was like right by the Summit, the arena. So Derek walked, just like before game 7. He's nervous. He's waiting all day. He decided he was going to walk to the arena, heck with riding the bus.
Okay.
When he gets to the arena, he sees all the champagne going to like both locker rooms because somebody's going to win.
Correct.
And so he just realized, like he said, like that's a visual I kind of like didn't want to see because you're not trying to. But it's like all this champagne, like truckloads full going in. And then he remembers after the game when they lost, sitting in the locker room, no champagne. Like he's drinking a beer. Hubert Davis, who just became the Knicks coach, Carolina's coach.
Tar Heels,
Hubert is crying. He says Hubert is crying next to me, like in the line, like crying to the point where I can't really listen to it anymore. And I'm drinking this beer, thinking about Houston drinking all that champagne.
All that champagne I saw.
Right.
I know they got it.
Right. And so he said he went in the shower to get away from Hubert and all. And he said Riley had to come get him. Like he didn't realize how long he'd been in there. The whole team had left the locker room. Dirk was still in the shower.
Wow.
And he said Riley came and like said, Dirk, we got to go. And he said Riley waited for him to get dressed. And then they walked out the locker room together.
Damn.
He said, I'll never forget that.
Wow. That's a great story, man. So amazing times, man. So want to fast forward, man, and what we call this is in the game or in your career. So fast forward to, the Baltimore beat, man. So how did you get on Baltimore and what's like really some of the tasks and duties you do for as a writer for the Baltimore Ravens?
Yeah, well, I'm a staff writer with their website. I write stories obviously about the team, work for the Ravens. We do podcasts, videos, articles, whatever. Ravens fans are great. Baltimore loves the Ravens. They can't get enough. It's been a highly successful organization. 2 Super Bowls for organization to start in 1996. Ozzie Newsome, great general manager from their inception. How I got with them is I worked for Comcast. Now they call it NBC Sports Washington, but the time when it was Comcast Baltimore.
Okay.
Was doing mostly writing for the website, but also did TV. Loved the job. I was the Ravens insider. So I was covering the Ravens for 4 years from like 13 till 17. But Comcast lost the TV contract with the Ravens.
Oh, so that's why it's 2 stints. It looked like that you were with Baltimore and then you went somewhere and then you came back.
Okay. Right.
Got you.
My first stint, I wasn't working for the Ravens. I was covering the Ravens.
Covering them.
For Comcast. Okay. Yes. So then my job disappeared. I still got to eat. So I went to Indianapolis. I got a job in Indianapolis working in their sports department, Indianapolis Star newspaper. And then after I left and had been there for a year and a half, the Ravens called me and asked me that I want to come back and work for them. And, I'd never worked for a team before. I've been a sports writer all my life covering teams. And, I had to think long and hard about whether I wanted to make that type of transition. But I had a lot of respect for the Ravens organization. I noticed that when I covered them, people didn't leave. Like almost everybody in the organization to me seems like they've been there. Like if you've been there 10 years, you're like new. So I'm like, they can't be treating people that badly if everyone's staying this long. I mean, these are talented people. They could get a job elsewhere if they wanted to. Why are they staying? So they must be treating people right. And then I got to know a lot of people in the organization, and I just figured that at this stage of my career, with the newspaper business being so volatile, it should be at least something I should give a shot. And I've really enjoyed it. I mean, I've enjoyed the 3 years I've been there. And that's amazing. That's what I'm doing.
So anytime I hear the Baltimore Ravens, I feel like I got to tighten the chin strap tighter, pull up my socks a little. It's 3rd and 1. That type of, I guess, demeanor, I guess culture, it seems like, at least on the field. So I guess tell us a little about, I can feel what it is on the field, but a little bit off the field, just the culture of the organization. I'm a fan of Ozzie Newsome, as you mentioned, but just the whole entire culture, as much as you can tell.
Yeah, I mean, I think the culture is, excellence, strive for perfection, strive for excellence. I think it's also a culture of stability, belief in how they do things. I mean, Ozzie Newsome was a general manager for, over 20 years. Now Eric DeCosta is the general manager, has been for a few years, doing a great job. But Ozzie's still there in the building. It's like Ozzie mentored Eric. Now Eric has his job, but if Eric wants to ask Ozzie a question, he's right there. Steve Bisciotti, the owner, to me, that's a great vision of having people, letting them do their job. John Harbaugh's been the head coach for 13 years. You don't see it in the NFL much.
All right.
they've been able to establish a culture there, and then they've been fortunate to have great players. Talk about the shit, Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, two iconic players on defense who are Hall of Famers.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Jonathan Ogden, another. Ozzy's first 2 draft picks were Jonathan Ogden and Ray Lewis. I mean,
Right. Don't really get better than that.
Right.
You start off right.
And then in his last draft, he drafts Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
So he drops the mic at the beginning and the end. So when you do that, and then you have the type of stability they have, that sets the tone for a long run of success, which is really what they have. I mean, the Ravens, they're kind of one of those teams that's like always in the hunt. So, yeah, I think they do it the right way.
Yeah, as a Steelers fan, I don't appreciate it, but I have respect.
But that's another great organization too. I mean, you could say the same things about them, and that's another thing to me that makes which side you're on. I mean, the Steelers and Ravens have been bumping heads for a long time. It's because most years they're in each other's way.
Yes, facts, right? Like it's who's going to represent and take it all the way, right? To go on. So no,
right.
Well, Cleveland might have something to say about it this year.
Oh yeah. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, they might.
Cleveland felt they won the Super Bowl when they knocked us off. Man. Like I can't. That's the only and I'm happy for them because I tell people I think we do have the toughest division, and I think Cincinnati's going to pull around once they get some protection for Burrow, man. So it's we beat each other up getting out of our division.
You guys must have a lot of fun, man. The Pittsburgh Cleveland thing. That's funny.
And the Cleveland fans are getting worse. People talk about anyway. I'm not even gonna get into that. It's about you. back to the Ravens. So so part of your duties, you mentioned the podcast, man. So you have the podcast Black in the NFL, man. So what was the genesis of that? How did that come about? It's an amazing and it's needed. So how did that come around?
Well, basically, last year, we all know some of the stuff that happened in this country, some of the tragedies, unfortunately, people losing their lives. But even before the George Floyd incident, I was speaking with, some people at the Ravens who I work with about, me kind of wanting to do this type of podcast. That they were just, I was having a conversation with players, and they were talking about the things going on that we all were in this country, the frustration, the feeling that, we needed a change. The injustices, whether it was police brutality, economics. So, I wanted to bring some of these conversations that I was having with players that didn't really fit into the stories that I'm writing to give them a voice, and then get somewhat to myself a little bit of my voice into a forum where just to make people think. I mean, race is a subject that, to me, still a lot of people are really reluctant to talk about honestly. And there's a real need for it. I mean, if we're going to get past some of the stereotypes with, racism and sexism that we've had to deal with since the inception of this country, we need to talk about them honestly. So that was really again, I mentioned, something being passionate about something. I knew it wasn't going to be for everybody. I've already talked about, not really wanting to deal with some of the hate or heat on Twitter.
Right.
And I knew that doing a podcast like this was going to invite some, not some pleasant comments from some people. But I just feel like we all have a duty to try and make things better in whatever way you can. And so since I am a sports writer and I have access to athletes and other people, and this is something that I feel like I can do a little bit as far as, express myself and encourage others to express themselves, I decided I was going to go for it and let the chips fall where they may.
That's amazing, man. And it's needed. And I mean, so we definitely feel that, me and MH, 100%, because we felt some of those things as well. More, from a business side, like what we see as we're going up the ranks. And then like you as well, as a sports writer, sharing some of those same sentiments that are just, same challenges, just different vertical.
Yeah, any aspect of life, man. Any aspect of life. It's amazing. And now, when you do what you guys do, podcast, and put yourself out there. It's funny, people will tell you things that blow you away. You know, I had a conversation with a guy I went to high school with. His father was a bus driver, drove for a private bus company outside of Philly. And to cut to the chase, they had about 35 drivers for his company and about 2 or 3 black guys. For about 8 years, he wondered like why a lot of these guys had like homes in Atlantic City, which is about an hour from Philly. You know, they had like vacation homes, cars. He knew they were making more money. Turns out the president of the bus company was paying the mortgage, buying them houses if you worked there. They never had to even buy a house. Like, that was part of the deal working for, because he wanted that loyalty. He didn't want you to leave to go work for the Philly bus company. So, but he didn't do that for the black drivers. And the 3 black drivers never knew that for like 10 years. They're working for this company. They never knew that everybody else was getting a house and they weren't. So just like stories like that, the house that he grew up in, my friend grew up in, we grew up in a neighborhood where whites were moving out to get away from us because we were moving in. When it first started happening, they weren't listing these houses. They weren't putting for sale signs out because they didn't want black people moving in. They were doing all these like private, sales behind the scenes, never putting a sign out. But his father found out that this house was for sale that he ended up growing up with because he drove this lady home through the neighborhood on his bus, took her door to door, and finally, like, it's built up, well, I'm getting ready to sell my house. You might be interested. So it was an accident.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, just stuff like, we don't even like, it's so ingrained. Some of this racism stuff is so ingrained. I don't think even sometimes I don't even realize like some of the things I've had that have affected me. I'm not going to say I'm overcome that. Things, stuff you don't even think about. Teachers, the way they perceived you, where you grew up, what jobs you were offered or not, what you knew, what you didn't know. Race plays a big part in it. It always does. It just does.
Man, it certainly does. We often hear about things. We learn about athletes through print journalism, through sports media, but do you ever learn something from athletes in your conversation, just life-wise? What are some things that you've learned from athletes?
Yeah, all the time, man, all the time. And I mean, people, I guess this is like a common theme I have. These guys when you talk about professional athletes, they're the best of the best.
Yes.
They're the best in the world at what they do. The 3rd string quarterback is one of the best quarterbacks in the world. And they've all had to overcome a lot of things to get this far. And yes, they're blessed. A lot of them are blessed with, physical skills, but it's more than that. It's the mental side and keeping that together, being strong, overcoming disappointment. Sports, one thing I do love about sports, not only the competition, the finality of it. I mean, everybody today talks trash. I can do this, I can do that. Once the game starts, somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. You might say, the ref's job this or whatever. You lost. You won. I like that.
Yes.
It's like, hey, we played, you lost, that's it. It doesn't matter what you say. So, yeah, I'm inspired by, I try and have respect for the people I interview because they have really excelled at what they do. It's not easy to do what they do. Guys sit around with beers and walk about, I could do that. No, you could not.
Cannot.
I mean, no, you couldn't. You think you might really believe that you could, but if you went on that field for 5 minutes, you wouldn't want anymore. So, I try and bring that respect to coaches, to players. You have to ask them tough questions, but I try and give them respect. And to me, if you do, you will get better answers from them if they sense that from you.
Sure. And then,
go
ahead, EJ.
I was going to jump into quick hit. So if you want to ask a question, hit them now.
Yeah. Just kind of following that. The nature of sports is, I'm sure in your career, you've seen a lot of athletes and a lot of coaches. How do you, I guess, keep from making athlete just another jersey number or a coach just another coach, and separating the profession obviously from real people, right?
Well, for me, it's like they're all people. They're all unique.
Yes.
I mean, I believe in God, and one reason why I do is no two people are alike.
Mm-hmm.
None. I mean, think about the billions of people, even like identical twins
Are not
alike.
Right.
There's something about them that's different. I mean, how can that even be? How is that even possible that there's no two people you'll meet that are exactly alike? So I try and remember that this isn't just a person I'm watching play, get desensitized that this is a human being.
Right.
Yeah, when you watch, especially in football, I mean, the injuries you see, the nature of the game, these guys are putting their bodies at risk every day in practice, every Sunday. So it's a human being. You shouldn't forget that. The emotion that goes with sports, the spontaneity of it, and then everybody's watching. Like, their office is in front of everybody. So when they lose their temper, everybody sees it. When they cuss, do something they shouldn't do, they're in the spotlight. They're under the microscope. So that, to me, if you can remember, this is just a person like you who's putting on his uniform and going out there, but it's a person. That's a person behind that number 24, number 48.
A human being, yes.
Then that helps you a lot not to take every game like, just another game.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. All right, MH. So we can stay on track, man. Hit them with the quick hits.
So then maybe your biggest hero or inspiration in the industry.
Wow.
Yeah, just a quick name.
Good.
Who you got?
Chuck Stone, probably a guy you never heard. He was a columnist a long time in Philadelphia, black columnist, really influential. Like, guys used to turn themselves in to the police through Chuck Stone, like, because they trusted him that much to protect themselves from police brutality. He would be my guy. One guy I admire who you guys would know is Mike Wilbon. I think he's been a trailblazer and done it in a classy way. He's always been one of my favorites.
That's awesome.
If you had to choose another profession, what would it be?
Yeah, assuming I wasn't good enough to be an athlete, I probably would want to be a coach, like a high school coach. I love youth. I love kids, and I probably would want to go into coaching.
Don't seem like a complainer, but biggest complaint you have about the job or your career?
I'm not a complainer, but biggest complaint. Well, I never got to be a columnist where I could just swing from the hip on, stuff that I want to say. I mean, I'm a quiet person, and I think sometimes people are surprised at some of the things I say, at least by the looks on their faces. They don't expect that to come from me. And I really would have loved to have been a columnist in a major city where I could have given more of my opinions on a lot of things going on in sports.
Player or coach in your career who genuinely made you laugh, like a actual funny player or coach?
Well, Barkley is funny. He would make me laugh a lot. I never covered him like on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. John Sally's a funny guy in Detroit. Yeah, he would make me laugh. Coaches, I know coaches coming to mind, man. Coaches are like, man, it's a different animal. They're under so much pressure.
Right.
I mean, it's no coach. It's funny. No coach is popping in my head right now.
Something you've accomplished a lot of things, but something that you haven't accomplished that you want to.
Wow. I think that I would like to. I don't know. I always wanted to climb a mountain, not just like a little hill. It just seemed like it would be so cool to just be standing on top. I've never done it. It'd probably be dangerous for me to do it now. I did go to the Grand Canyon this summer though for the first time. That was a bucket list trip because just the way seeing the pictures wasn't enough for me. So I did pose like I climbed the Grand Canyon.
There you go.
I did not. Right. I did not.
And if we were putting together an all basketball team, a starting five from the teams that you have covered, who would that be?
Well,
who's cracking the lineup?
Yeah, we're just talking now. Detroit, Nets, Knicks, and I covered daily. So I mean, Isaiah was the first person popped in my head. I mean, Isaiah Dumars might be my backcourt. I'm sure Patrick would be my center. And then forwards, man, we're talking, Ryman, I got to choose from. Oh, guys like Oakley. Ryman would be there for sure. And I guess I'm looking for a power forward now. I'd probably go with Charles Oakley. But, I think my favorite basketball player of all time is Magic Johnson. I just love the flair he played with, but doing it in a way to win. And I just love the way that everyone loved playing with Magic. I don't think there's a teammate that ever played with Magic who was like, he's Magic type guy. Like if you were in a bad spot, you would want Magic to be with you. Like if Magic was on a Titanic, you'd be like, "We getting off this boat, man. Everything gonna be cool." He just makes you feel that way.
Yeah,
and just the joy he played with. I just loved watching him play.
Nice. So I have a quick hit too, man. So really quick, the Ravens are coming to Monday Night Football here in Las Vegas to open up the season. It's going to be a really big game, and it's for us. It's not for us. For Ronnie Stanley, it's going to be a homecoming. So he's a Vegas local, played at Gorman, really good dude. So it's going to be awesome to see him come back. So my quick hit is: did you ever think that you would see NFL in Vegas?
No, not in my lifetime. Now, if you told me it was going to happen one day, I'd been like, yeah, okay,
like maybe, right? But
not with the speed that it happened.
Absolutely.
But I mean, hey, man, money.
That talks, and the other stuff walks.
Exactly, man. Exactly. Always follow the money. Always follow the money. Yep. All right, so let's jump into the winner's circle, man. This is the platform, and this is, really one of the things that we pride and really excited about our show. And, we're going to reach out to you and just said, what do you want to promote, what you want to talk about? And you just said that you're really a big supporter and proponent of Alzheimer's Association for, national, local, just any way you can support, man. And you shared with us, but I want you to kind of share how that became so a passion for you, and what are some ways that people that are listening can support and get involved? Yeah, I mean, both my parents passed away of Alzheimer's. I mentioned my mom being the first Black woman to graduate from Temple University of Pharmacy. My father was a social worker. Both really brilliant people, and to watch their final years, them lose memories, lose thoughts, it was just painful to me, and I never thought about it until it happened to them. And then now, so many people are dealing with, parents or brothers and sisters who are going down that route because we're living longer, but it seems like our brain sometimes can't last as long as we live. So, yeah, I would just encourage anyone to, if they have a local chapter of National Alzheimer's Association, your local chapter, there's plenty of walks almost in every community to raise money. And I think that that's the type of disease, like a cancer where, almost everyone's going to be affected by it if you haven't been already. So to see both of my parents, go down that road is something that, I'll never forget. So that's why Alzheimer's, a cure, or certainly more and more processes to slow down that disease, to me is near and dear to my heart.
How do we educate ourselves with the disease? I know a lot of people kind of just aware of it, but not really deep diving into the education parts of it. So how do we educate ourselves into it?
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there, I mean, that you can Google at your fingertips, or you call Alzheimer's Association, and I'm sure they would put you in touch with the best, reading and research material to learn more about it. And also, as I mentioned too, like for the caregivers of people going through that, how heartbreaking that is for people who are caring for someone suffering from that disease. They need support too. So yeah, again, it's just one of those, like any disease, but it's just one of those, it's a really emotional disease to watch someone who you've known them a certain way your whole life, and then at the end, they're robbed of memories, and you are robbed of spending time with them because they kind of disappear into this blank space little by little. So the information is out there. Again, I just hope that medically we can keep making advances to where people can deal with the disease better and have more quality years at the end of their life.
So is there any links, or have there been talked? I know there's a lot of player safety things happening in NFL. Have there been any links or talks from the NFL, or do you see anything from the NFL supporting that, right? Because it seems like, October is really big breast cancer, right? Or just cancer awareness, in general. But have you seen anything, or is it really specific, like local and maybe by team by team?
Yeah, I don't know of any national NFL program, but I could be wrong. And I just think that you will see more and more players in all sports get involved with it, because again, I just think it's going to be something that affects more and more people, including athletes and their families on a regular basis. But I think that this is important that you mentioned about the league and athletes, what they're doing. I mean, when you're given a platform, think of how you can give back. It doesn't have to be anything grandiose or something that takes on where everybody knows about. It can just be your little space of people in your life. I remember Magic Johnson saying something like, if everybody just took care of their neighborhood, like everybody comes from somewhere. So
Right.
if you got to be made it to the NBA or the NFL, and you just went back to your neighborhood where everybody knows you, and
Right.
try to do what you could for that community. Think about if every player did that. Just that. You have to go national, you have to be on commercial, not just, hey, I'm going to build a library, I'm going to donate computers to school, whatever. Just where you grew up.
That'd
I
be
mean, it
big.
makes a huge difference.
So, definitely, and if there's anything else you want to speak on, but I definitely wanted to give you, because that was your platform. But a couple things I wanted to touch on. Really, first of all, I want to touch on, you're an author. We said that in the intro, and then I'll let you speak on it. But Irving Cross, you helped write a book with, which is I'm looking forward. I'm actually, that's on my book list. My summer reading was a little slow this year, so I'm gonna have to pick back up. But just talk about us. It's Bearing the Cross that you co-authored with him, and just tell me what that meant to you, and rest in heaven. You just, I think, recently lost him this year. But,
We did a few months
please speak
ago.
on that.
Herb passed away a few months ago. Played Philadelphia Eagles. And most people know him from his work for the NFL Today show, which is still on a
Mhm.
much different version. But Herb was the first Black national sports analyst. So before the Stephen A. Smith, and the Tom Jackson and so on and on, he was the trailblazer for all that. So he wanted to write a book, which I didn't know till I met him, but had never gotten around to it. And I remember Irv, he played for the Eagles growing up in Philly, watching NFL Today. I was just looking to do a book project. I just said, you know what? I've never written a book. I kind of would like to write one day. So I contacted the publisher, sent him some book ideas,
Uh-huh.
and the idea on Irv was his favorite. He's like, oh, I loved Irv. I think a lot of people would really, relate to this. So I tracked Irv down. We met in a hotel room in Philly, and we kicked it for a couple of hours, and we just hit it off. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to do this with you. And it was really a pleasure to get to know him as a person, great person. Really one of the most faithful people. I mean, he was one. I didn't know so many things about him. He was one of 15 kids.
Yeah.
Grew up really poor. Lost his mom when he was 10. Was the first person in his family to go to college. Went to Northwestern. He and Brett Musburger were at Northwestern together. Didn't know that they would end up working together on a TV show years later. He just had a fascinating life story, and that's how I got to write the book. It was just kind of seemed like it was something that our paths crossed, and it was kind of meant to be. And I would like to do other books, but to me, a book is a labor. It has to be a labor of love, at least for me. And if it's not going to be something I'm passionate about, I just don't want to do it. So I'm kind of looking for that next, the urge, the right subject, the right time. You know, maybe it's coming. You know, maybe it's coming. I'm always kicking it around, trying to see if there's another book project I want to do.
I like it. And then you also talked about giving back. And, you know, I do want to make sure we talk about the NABJ. All right. Is it that the right acronym? So
National Association of Black Journalists. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. So that's a part of the giving back, right? Like you talk about these athletes and you know, you've been a pioneer in things that you do and you speak about like you personally let people know that you're involved, but talk about that and shed a little light on that.
Yeah. National Association of Black Journalists always recommended young people wanting to get into the profession, they should join. You know, when I was coming up in the business, there weren't many of us doing it. NABJ, you know, was formed by some guys before me and sisters before me to try and help so we could help each other have opportunities and create opportunities, you know, for the younger generations coming up. And that's exactly what the organization has done. The NABJ even now is a watchdog for a lot of media companies. I mean, you know, when people working at a CBS or ESPN or whatever, we feel like they're not being treated right. Yeah, we bring it to the attention of the masses and try and help things get right. So, yeah, NABJ is important for job opportunities. It's important for support as a support group for all of us, where a lot of us sharing similar experiences can converse and talk. So, yeah, I've been a long-time member of NABJ. There are plenty of other journalists who've done way more in the organization than I have, but I've always been a supporter of NABJ because I just feel that that's a tool, a vehicle that we all need. And in my career, it's definitely been helpful to me. I found out about jobs, not just for myself, but for others, where they went and chased opportunities and were able to get jobs. And yeah, just the support that we can give each other, I think is vitally important.
That's beautiful. So since you're still on that, right? This is the part of the show we like to call the assist. All right. So this is where you give a coaching gem or a life philosophy or just words to live by that you can share with our audience, man. So give us that coaching gem.
Wow. The first thing that popped in my mind was my dad. We went to a track meet. I was a kid. And so we watched this race. And for some reason, he liked this one guy. And at the end, you know, this guy passed the guy he was rooting for. And so Dad was like, man, I just thought he was mad because the guy lost. Dad's like, man, he said, you know, it looked to me like he quit. He said, son, I'm going to tell you something. Whatever you do, don't quit. He said, if you lose, things don't go your way. He said, always be proud that you gave it your best. He said, but if you ever start something, finish it and don't quit.
That's good.
I have never forgotten it. I've just never forgotten it. So I think that applies to almost anything. If you really want to do something, don't quit. I mean, now, like I said, all the hate you get on Twitter, people always got something to say. There's always going to be people telling you what you can't do. That's never going to stop. Don't buy into it. Don't buy into it. If you believe in you got to believe in yourself. There will be people who believe in you, but you have to believe in yourself. You can't, to me, how are you going to make it if you don't believe in yourself?
Super facts.
Yeah.
Super facts. MH, last words.
Mr. Brown, man, really appreciate your time today. And I think a lot of times in our generation, we have access to a lot of information, but we don't sit down and listen to those all the time that have already done it, that have experienced it all. So we really appreciate your time. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining us. But thank you for all the work that you've done and paving the way for those that look like us as well growing up. So thank you very much.
Thank you, too. I mean, I loved it. Enjoy meeting you guys and getting to know you. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. I mean, you guys are the future, man. I love it. I just love seeing young journalists, young broadcasters, young professionals doing their thing. And the world has changed. It's your time now. Do your thing, man. Do your thing.
Well, it's folks like you that paved the way, man. So we're blessed to have you, man. So, hey, wrapping it up, man. We just want to thank our guests again, man. You've blessed us and graced us with some great stuff. We want to thank you, the people, for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's show.
New shows dropping every Thursday, so please subscribe to the podcast because visual representation matters. So that's why we're here in front of you. But hey, you can also subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. So remember, please stay safe, practice gratitude, and know we're rooting for you.
Screaming, all us blacks got is sports and entertainment until we even.
Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yo. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Spent about 2 racks on handmade new rags. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. That's everybody from sports to college class to rap and back.